You don't have to drive like an idiot to slowly destroy your car. Some of the most expensive damage starts with things that feel completely harmless. Resting your hand in the wrong place, ignoring a light because the car still drives fine, shifting gears about half a second too early. None of these will make your engine explode tomorrow, and that's exactly what makes them expensive, because you can do them for years before the car finally hands you the bill. There's a good chance you're doing at least one of these every single time you drive, so start with the one that happens in almost every parking lot in America. Someone backs out of a space, the car is still rolling backward, and they drop it straight into drive without waiting for a full stop. It feels instant and harmless, but for that brief moment, the drivetrain absorbs the force of stopping and reversing the car's motion, a job that belongs to the brakes, not the gearbox. Do this often enough, and you're putting repeated stress on components that were never designed to absorb it, quietly shortening their life one rolling stop at a time. The fix costs nothing. Let the car come to a complete stop first, then shift. Tire pressure is the next one, and most drivers only think about it once a tire looks visibly flat. Long before that happens, an underinflated tire is flexing more than it should with every rotation, building extra heat, wearing unevenly, and quietly costing you fuel economy the entire time. The number to check isn't the maximum pressure printed on the tire's sidewall. That's the ceiling, not the target. The number that actually matters is sitting on a sticker inside the driver's door jamb, and it's worth checking monthly, not just when the dashboard finally lights up to tell you. Cold mornings create their own version of this next problem. Sliding into a freezing car and immediately flooring it out of the driveway feels completely normal, especially when you're running late. The oil and engine are still cold, everything hasn't reached normal operating temperature yet, and flooring it before the engine has had a chance to warm up adds wear you could avoid simply by taking it easy for the first few minutes. This isn't a case for idling in the driveway for 10 minutes either. That wastes fuel and barely helps. It just means driving gently until the engine comes up to temperature the way it was built to. Quick one, and it's not even mechanical. A bird drops some white poo on the hood and it sits there for a week because nobody wants to deal with it. Leave bird droppings or tree sap sitting on the paint long enough, especially baking in the sun, and they can stain or etch the clear coat. Wiping it off within a day costs nothing. Letting it bake into the paint for a month is how a small mess turns into a permanent blemish. A small chip in the windshield seems like the kind of thing you can just live with, and for a while you can. But every bump and temperature change works at that tiny chip, and eventually it spreads into a full crack running across the glass. A chip caught early is often a 15-minute repair. The same damage ignored for a few months usually turns into replacing the entire windshield. Warning lights deserve more nuance than most drivers give them, because not every glowing icon means the same thing. A steady check engine light is worth scheduling a diagnostic for soon, but it usually isn't an emergency happening in real time. A flashing check engine light, an oil pressure warning, or a temperature warning is a different category entirely. Those can mean the engine is actively being damaged with every mile you keep driving on it. Treating every light the same is how a 5-minute scan tool visit at the local mechanic gets skipped, and skipping it is how you end up needing an entire engine rebuild instead.
Long downhill grades bring out another habit that feels completely natural, riding the brakes the entire way down. Keep steady pressure on the pedal for miles instead of seconds, and the brakes get hotter than they're built to handle, wearing the pads faster and, in extreme cases, reducing how well they actually stop the car. Downshifting lets the engine help slow the car, the same idea paddle shifters are built for, so the brakes aren't doing the whole job alone the whole way down. Then there's the pothole that everyone sees coming and hits anyway, because slowing down in time feels inconvenient. The impact can bend a wheel, damage a tire, or knock the front end out of alignment, and none of that shows up immediately. A wheel can be bent or an alignment slightly off for weeks before a driver notices the car pulling to one side, or the tires wearing strangely on the edges. Running the fuel tank down to fumes on a regular basis has its own quiet cost. In many vehicles, the fuel pump sits inside the tank and relies on being surrounded by fuel to stay cool, and running the gas tank consistently low means the pump spends more time running without being fully covered. It varies by vehicle, but treating a low fuel light as a countdown timer rather than a warning is a habit worth breaking either way. Oil gets treated as a single category, synthetic or not, when the exact type the manufacturer calls for on the cap or in the manual actually matters just as much. That number isn't a suggestion. Using a thicker oil than specified doesn't automatically mean better protection, despite how often that claim gets repeated. It just means the engine is running on oil it wasn't built for. Alignment problems show up in small ways first. The car drifts slightly to one side, the steering wheel sits a few degrees off center, and one edge of a tire wears faster than the rest. Because the car still drives fine, most people wait. What actually happens while you wait is that a relatively cheap alignment problem turns into an expensive set of tires, worn down unevenly until they need replacing years before they should have. Winter driving in places that salt the roads adds a threat most people never look at because it's happening underneath the car where nobody's checking. Salt and slush clinging to the underside after driving through winter roads can rust the frame and parts you never see from the driveway. Rinsing the underside occasionally through the winter is one of the cheapest habits that prevents one of the most expensive kinds of damage, and it matters far more in states that use salt on the roads in winter than anywhere else. Walk into an auto parts store looking for coolant, and the bottles make it look easy. Yours was orange, so you buy orange. Except color isn't a reliable way to match coolant. Different manufacturers use completely different formulas, and pouring in the wrong one can cause real damage instead of fixing anything. The number that actually matters is printed in the owner's manual, not whatever color looks closest to what was already in there. Manual transmission drivers have a habit of their own, resting a foot lightly on the clutch pedal while driving instead of keeping it flat on the floor. Even resting it there lightly keeps pressure on parts that are only meant to work when you're actually shifting, adding wear mile after mile. It feels like a comfortable place to put your foot. It's actually a slow way to shorten the life of the clutch. That small puddle under the car in the driveway gets ignored more often than not, especially once it becomes familiar. Some moisture is completely normal. Condensation dripping from the air conditioning system on a hot day is expected and harmless. Other fluids are not. A colored puddle, an oily sheen, or a consistent spot in the same place morning after morning is worth identifying rather than ignoring indefinitely.
None of these things you do to your car will strand you on the side of the road tomorrow, and that's exactly the point. Your car sits in the driveway looking fine the whole time these habits are happening, right up until a mechanic hands you a repair bill for something that's been building for years. So, which of these do you actually do, and which one on this list do you think is overblown? And if you think you dodged all of these, wait until you see how many car myths you still believe. That video is on screen now.